Welcome, everybody. Today we got Ray with us, and we got the software veteran. I forgot the term, but you're the software expert. We don't have a topic as always, but we're just going to talk about software and also a new opportunity that is coming up for many people to benefit from Ray's and my knowledge when it comes to building applications. You want to talk about that? Because it pretty much was, I started the idea, but you took most of the initiative.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked before about how, we say we're going to talk about software here. And, it used to be like software was something you hired someone else to do, right? And now there are more people who are able to go build it themselves. It's different change in demographics, but also change in tooling. We talked about low-code tools, talked about AI tools, what have you. But the other thing is like what you and I do, where we have, amongst our other, practices, and I guess we'll talk about one of your other products in a little bit later in the hour. We have I run these communities, right, based on what I call micro consulting, the idea that you don't need hours or days, or you don't need to hand off to someone entirely, and you don't need like huge amount of consultative advice. What you need is basically when you get a little stuck, be able to get unstuck and be able to keep on moving. And there are some processes, right, or some mental patterns that we can learn that will allow us to move more quickly. And that's kind of the premise of the office hours model that we have here at State Change. Thank you for the QR code, but also at Low Code Pro Code, right? And you and I have been doing this for people who are trying to build their stuff both on the front end and the back end. We even have a couple people who are members of both communities. And the sort of the insight, which seems kind of obvious in retrospect, is that I've got a lot more expertise, right? And people come because of my expertise around code, around back end data considerations, and also I'm more of a data scientist by training, which sort of makes it more of a natural fit for the AI part, at least the more mathematical part of it. And you've got lots of deep experience and credibility on the front end around issues of design, around issues of UX, around issues of how to build and how to build fast. I mean, you were at one point doing a lot of Wiz work, and you were doing a lot of more recently Nordcraft work and WeWeb work, and and you even have some blogs around that. And people can come to you and they're able to make that kind of really good progress. People sort of sing your praises to me. Anyone who has met you and seen you in that environment can't stop talking about it. And so the notion was that there probably more people would benefit from having both of us. So we created sort of a gold pass for people who want to join both for less than the price of each, because I think like joining both of our communities was something close to like $300 a month. And so we made a $199 offer that is that actually, if you go to Station AI, you'll be able to see it at the top. I don't know if you put it onto your site yet. And
I
you
was a little bit busy. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. And but
Because if
we'll
I open my site, I gotta fix 15 things before I add your thing. That's just how I work.
Yeah, we got the backlog. And the but the idea is that, like, not that people should go and join both things forever, but that you go and you get help and you're able to then ship just that much more quickly. And the State Change Pro office hours are like 5 times a week. How often are the ones over at NoCode Pro Code?
5 times a week, every weekday.
Right. So like between the two, I mean, there's like that's 10 office hours per week. That's a lot of opportunity to get a lot of help. And so and so it's an experiment. All right. I would love to have someone sign up for it and abuse the heck out of it. I want someone to show up to as many of the office hours as they can. I mean, I think for both of us, they're kind of spread out for different people around the world. So someone who is in London might have, find that there are going to be, 3 office hours per week, say from State Change, that are good times for them and a couple that are kind of bad times for them. Just like someone who's in, say, the Western United States would find there are 3 good times for them, and then, a couple that are, and like, 2 that are not so good. Someone who's in Asia would find there are sort of 4, early and late, that are good for them, and then the one that I would call middle of the day is, of course, middle of their night, and they're not so excited about that. But the idea is there's something that's going to be convenient for you, and that you can make a lot more progress. I would be just totally excited to have someone join and then be able to kind of race through and be able to ship in absolute record time as a result of using the best tools in the world, their own commitment to the project and being able to get that kind of help on both the front end and the back end, and to sort of be able to ship to the other side, and not like in 6 months, but like in 1 month or whatever is required. So
And
it's with that in mind that we made this, to see if we can help people go radically faster.
and you're Mr. React, you are Mr. Vibe coding, but you don't just know how to vibe code, you know the actual code that is behind it. So if someone says, you know what, screw it, F no code, I want to make an app in React, but I don't want to use React Native for some reason. I want to use Despia, or I want to use, some hybrid frameworks. I'll be able to help on that part, and Ray will be able to help with the React part, and then I'll be able to come in there and consult you and give you some, insights on UX and UI, which you can look at the state change landing page. That is not Ray's strength, but this is where it's the yin and yang.
Okay. Yes. And
I tried to do it as nice as possible. I apologize.
Nope. Nope. I've earned that. Yeah, you can sort of tell I am not the Mr. Graphic Design. I work in marketing. I work around finance. I work around like I say, the sort of the deeper parts of technology. But UX is really important, and that is something that, like Yassine knows super well. Anyway, so that was the idea we had, and that was the experiment that we're hoping we'll be able to do, and we'll see what we'll be able to do in the month of September.
Fantastic. And then if you're using WeWeb, if you're using Nordcraft, if you're using anything, we'll be able to help you with the no-code side. And then, if it's more about the analytical stuff, how do I do that? How do I work with this custom view component? How do I get a custom React component working in Nordcraft? You got Ray's extensive experience and my round border button skills.
I think anybody who's worked with you knows just how inaccurate that self-deprecating comment was.
I mean, to be fair, I have people in my community, when I show them something, how I'm adding a button, they're like, let me guess, you're going to add grade 200 to it. It's James, it's like grade 200 is my favorite color.
You have grade 200, and I keep on talking about stop and debug and console.log.
I mean, I do console logs too. We do console logs in office hours. But I did inherit that from you. I would have to say, because I'm like, we just do a console log, and then we'll do a try catch, and I was like, my God, I'm sounding like Ray.
There's medication for that. So this is great. We'll come back to the Despia thing, I think a little bit in the hour. But like, having talked about one thing that's sort of new for us, or our idea and our initiative, what are we seeing that's new out in the market, sir?
I saw one very cool thing, and I think this no-code tool may be actually something that is wiping out Nordcraft and wiping out WeWeb. It's called Vibe Flow. What it is, it's a node-based programming interface, like Nordcraft, where you do your formulas with node-based programming, but it incorporates node-based visual programming with vibe coding. Let me see if I can pull up a video. I did not prepare for this, as you can see, because I've been working day and night on. If you just like look up Vibeflow, you only see yoga studios in your area. I'm getting like 5 yoga studios in San Diego here, but let me just look their AI app. So it's a visual application builder. That's what it is. Let me see if I can share my screen so the viewers can get an idea of what this is about. Do you see my screen?
I do see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, let's make that bigger. Okay, so this is VibeFlow. And what it does is it's essentially you can vibe code an application, but then you can go in there and you can work with those nodes like you do in Nordcraft to configure the dynamic data and the backend of that application. So it combines visual programming, visual workflow programming with vibe coding. So it takes the best of code and the best of some of the principles that we are seeing here. You see, like you have this kind of like this, this node-based programmer where you have your inset, your embedding nodes, your database, and you can select tools, right? So you can build your vibe coding application, but it essentially creates this visual markup schema that lets you visually build your application. So the AI can give you a starting point, but you can then complete it visually, which is pretty darn cool.
It is. It is. This is actually really interesting. If you were to scroll, first, I would also note that Vibeflow is it's a Y Combinator backed company, so they've got some venture capital funding. They see it looks like they're in like the current batch. So I'll be curious what fundraising they do, because usually that's how the end of Y Combinator works, is that, or Y Combinator a batch works, that there's like demo day and they raise money, and so this is like the new venture capital back thing. And I look at this and think, okay, my friends at Xano are going to be quaking about this a little bit. But if you could just scroll down just a little bit more, because I think there's something else in here that's worth noting. You were showing that the vibe, the visual part for a second, but if you scroll down just a little bit more here, I think what I'd really like to do is highlight. I don't know if you can zoom in with your screen share, but this live code generation thing. And I want to bring this to your attention because not only is this like sort of interesting feature of our friends over at Vibeflow, but like this gets to like a whole way that these tools work. And I think there are sort of two types of tools out there. One type is what I would call a runtime. Xano is a runtime. Nordcraft is a runtime, right? These are both that you have to go run it basically on their infrastructure, and they might allow you to go run their software on something else, but like it goes down relatively deep, right? The configuration or whatever you're creating needs to be run on the software they're providing underneath in order for it to continue to work. Wizzed basically is this. Nordcraft works this way. WeWeb is not this, right?
Yeah.
Which is where things get a little bit interesting. WeWeb, for example, is a code generator. It's in the business of creating HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. It's actually creating a Vue.js app.
Like Webflow.
Webflow
right?
also creates, those same three things and can be exported to something else. And the idea is that these are code generators, and what they create are code, essentially text files, that you can then go host somewhere else. You can go host it on Cloudflare, on Netlify, on Vercel, whatever. Just go get your website, up and going. When you think about most of the vibe coding tools out there, like the way that Cursor works, or Claude Code works, or Convex works, Codex works, those are all code generators, right? Because actually their business is to go create the code and get the text file at the end, right? We call vibe coding because it creates text. Lovables and Bolt kind of in the middle. There's some degree of exportability, but they're kind of designed to be run inside their own environment. And then V0 is an interesting play because yes, it's just a code generator, but it has a really close integration to make it easy to deploy to Vercel, because the V in V0 stands for Vercel because it's a Vercel product. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up is because of that box you had right there. That box you just had up showed what code you are creating with Vibeflow, which is to say, it's just creating JavaScript. It's just creating a very specific form of JavaScript that then can work back and forth with the visual plane. And I bring this up because they didn't have to go make up a new language. They just used an SDK for a language that exists to be able to make it then just work. And I think that Vibeflow uses Convex, right? So it's a way of like building Convex backends. So the infrastructure they work with is working with Convex and other sort of best-in-class tools that are popular with the coding, and indeed with the vibe coding set. And now, instead of you having great code yourself, it helps you. It helps make.
What most people don't understand, where WeWeb is a tool that builds a real application for you that you can host. You could technically open it up in Cursor and try hacking around with it, even though it has its own abstraction. It adds attributes for WeWeb, but you need to do that, otherwise the editor doesn't know what the heck is going on, right? Mm-hmm. But WeWeb is a code generation tool that generates universally usable code that is now bound to a specific infrastructure. Where Nordcraft is, they made up their own programming language, same as Wisp, and they have a code generator that only generates their programming language. Which the downside of that is if they stop maintaining their programming language, you're at the risk of your product slowly dying off. Where with WeWeb, if they just keep making sure that the editor runs on the latest version of Vue, and they stop having components that break your whole application, like was sometimes mentioned in the community, but I think they fixed it. That's all they got to do, right? I mean, of course, community would wish if they would do more, and they're doing more with AI. But they have someone else manage all the dependencies, all the complexities. They don't have to worry about expressions and all that random stuff. They're just built on top of Vue, and they just have this code generator that generates Vue code, where they don't have to maintain a programming language, which is arguably a little bit more work. So it's probably better building your product on top of a programming language that is used by actual programmers, and it is an actual stable ecosystem on top of someone proprietary programming language that's maintained by a couple of people, right? As other no-code tools.
Yeah, and I think that last point you made about maintenance is a really key one. Like if you're going to be depending on something, how long are you depending on, and how much are you depending on them to take care of things for you.
But this is also why I think Nordcraft is going open source, because people are looking at that and they are like, they have their own programming language. Essentially, that's what a runtime is. And what if they just go bye-bye? And I think this is the reason why they open source it, so to give people the confidence that should something happen to them, they can keep running it. But the truth of that is, I actually talked with the CEO of Moment about that, which is an up-and-coming no-code builder. They are focused on AI. It's kind of like, I see it as a WeWeb disruptor, but they're not quite there yet. The CEO told me it doesn't make sense having your proprietary runtime open source, because who's going to maintain it anyway? Probably the only person understanding it is me. And was like, that is a good point.
Yeah, like people think that open source is the answer to that problem, and there's another answer, right? Which is the contingent license. So, like, I remember when I was first starting my legal technology company, I had these law firms say, "Well, what if you go bankrupt? What's going to happen?" Like, well, okay, I guess you're just going to get to keep on running this for as long as you want to keep on running this. In the event that like we're not able to do things. And so what I had to do is I had to make a license saying, or make it part of our agreement that they would get the source code, right? And more importantly, they would get a license to do everything they need to be able to maintain the software, after they had purchased it from us, because we were doing some perpetual licenses in addition to like.
That is a good. I got to do this with Despi. Should anything happen to Despi, everybody gets a copy of the Code Magic YAML file and the Nordcraft backend, if Nordcraft is still around by then, ready to maintain, plus the Xano stuff. We'll do
right. But really what that does, it just puts the pin in the grenade for a day, like if your vendor has gone down, it is time to switch. And I
just want to put this out there. But it's a good idea. It sounds good on the landing page, right?
Well, yes, and like people, and I think there's a little bit of confusion as to what open source is and what it's good for. I mean, the world's come a long way since Eric Raymond was sort of making the stuff happen with the GNU Foundation, but the Free Software Foundation. That's what I meant to say. And I used to work down the street from him, and that was kind of neat. I remember talking to FSF about like us, about my company distributing open source software. And like the FSF did not like it, but of course FSF didn't like people being charged for software because they didn't think that's what should happen with software. But of course it just became sort of the standard, right? That you would like deploy a virtual machine on Ubuntu or something, and that was just the way you could deploy it, and then you would have more licensing considerations. But I actually do think that that's a little bit of a red herring, and people are concerned about, well, what if I build on this and then the company goes away? And I would suggest two things. The first is far more likely that your business goes away before these vendors do, just because they've got money and they're going to be, even if they go into zombie mode, it'll be usable for longer, right?
Silver IO.
And then you're asking how to switch over. And the second is this stuff has gotten the evolution of technology is making it all deflationary. So it will be cheaper tomorrow for you to go switch over from what this is today to something else, and you'll just say, well, what was I ever worried about?
As long as they give you access to the key store, otherwise you're effed. There's some
Uh,
no-code tools, like some especially no-code mobile app builders that like keep the key store so you can't switch to any other one.
oh goodness. Yeah. Yeah, they're probably actually that's a really good point. There are probably some things you do need to be concerned about making sure that these fly by night vendors don't own. But most of the time, like from a how much is it going to cost me to develop point of view, once you know what it is you want, I mean, my thing about low code has long been that like low code really makes the rebuild cheaper, not the build, because the build is usually more about the business needs. But on the technical side, this stuff gets much easier, and
I
that
had
same
one.
principle applies to AI parts.
I had one client, and I
Mm.
quoted them, and they said, "How is your quote for building this in no code as expensive as the stuff we got quoted in React?" And I said, "It's the same work. We will have to sit on a meeting, and we will have to understand what your product is about, and we will have to build it based on your needs, and we have to understand and do the discovery, and we have to think about how to build the engine." And that is essentially what you're paying for. You're paying for this proprietary engine. You're not paying for the code. You're paying for the result, and the result is the same. And I do think my result is better, but I also sound slightly arrogant when I am very confident in my skill. So
Yeah.
and that's what I told them, and it made sense for them because you're not paying for how, you're paying for the result, right? And
I
if you
think that's
have a result that's more ownable, that you can understand, that you're not looking at like 50 files or 500 files and you have no idea where something is, that is a better end result. I interviewed one from our community. They're a big enterprise. They sell private jets, and they build a mobile app where you can just like casually buy, in the morning, like while you're scrolling on your phone, a private jet, swipe to the right, get a private jet, like for 20 million, like that. Rich people's problems. That's what he said. And they are able to fix their application in a matter of minutes, because he says all those rich people, when they want to buy a private jet right now, they want to buy a private jet right now. So when the button doesn't work, we're losing millions and millions and millions of dollars. So we need to be able to have the intern go in there and be able to just like somehow fix this button without messing up everything else. And that's why they're using no code.
goodness gracious.
It's a problem. I mean, it costs them millions of dollars for a button not to work if you're selling private jets on a mobile app, right?
Well, yeah, it totally changes the dynamic of like which parts are important and who you can afford to work for and blah blah blah. But yeah, that's what I really like actually about building in this space and helping people is that it's much more. It is to your point that the core of it is really still that business consulting style. It's like what's the job to be done, what's the business, where's the money to be made, how are we, what's the promise, how do we like link this back into marketing? And you get to focus your attention on that without having a lot of separation or specialization of labor, right? Because now it's like product person interacting with tools as opposed to product person interacting with their engineering liaison who's interacting with an engineering
Because
team
they
that's
said
interacting with
it
their
took
tools.
3 days for the engineering team to do anything. They
Mhm.
need to boot up. It's like an old Windows computer.
Right. And I think an engineering person would say correctly that the reason it takes them 3 days to do anything has to do with like writing tests and whatever, because they're going to build it out of stone. They're going to make sure this thing is able to last or as they put it, scale or what have you. My general take is that it's not nearly as important early on. This is what we've talked before about like product excellence versus engineering excellence, and but later, of course, it starts to matter more for some parts, and that's going to be that's what a good product owner is differentiating. Is like which pieces are important when, and then that's how you gut the cost from it, not through the initial, like you say, the spin up part, because that initial spin up part is so much about business understanding and collection
It's
of whatever.
the difference of once you have this build for, let's say, $50,000 to $100,000. There are WeWeb agencies charging people $100,000 to build a WeWeb app. Surprisingly, it's not like, are you paying $100,000 to set up a WeWeb app compared to $100,000 to set up a React app, even though most React apps are now vibe coded, So I think actually there's more effort and thoughts being put into the WeWeb app or Nordcraft. But it's like, okay, paying 100,000 for both, it's fine. But the difference is, are you paying 2,000 a month for maintenance moving forward, or are you paying 20,000 for 2 people doing maintenance full time?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So it's the recurring cost that like building software is cheap, maintaining software is expensive.
That's also a really good point. Which brings us back to which brings us to the difference between, companies that are build tools versus companies that are infrastructure or deployment tools. So like the build tools, this would be like kind of where and where I think some of these companies get in trouble is when they're trying to be both of those. Right. The theory is, hey, you come in, you use our nice build tool, and then you're going to stay with us forever because you're using our infrastructure. Right. And that becomes that captivity.
I do have one rule with Despia. Because we are a build tool, you are unable to configure a Despia application unless you use our M2 build resources, because that's kind of like the whole magic sauce. Of course, we can send you a template of the framework and you fill in the gaps manually and put in your modules and add your targets. If you have a week to spend on that, you can do that, and we can send you tutorials on how to do that. But why would you do that, right? The whole idea is you can just ship it to the App Store. So there is a dependency on the build tool. But what we don't want to do is cloud hosting. So what I'm very against is, I don't want to run your infrastructure. Everything that runs in your app is offline. And if you want infrastructure, and we are now at the point where we need to add some infrastructure for some features, we're actually going to have you put in your Cloudflare API key, grant us limited access to create Cloudflare workers to do certain things on your Cloudflare instance. And then you do this under your own Cloudflare account, and Despia is just a nicer interface for doing it that's no code. So we don't have to manage hosting, because then if something is down, I can always blame it on Cloudflare because it's not our fault. Where if I would be using Cloudflare on my end and something is down, it's my fault. But if we're the interface and they directly host with Cloudflare, and Cloudflare is once again down because they love being down, then it's Cloudflare's fault, not mine, And I don't have to do support for hosting because, to be honest, that recurring revenue from hosting, I'll rather sell them an editor that doesn't cost me anything to maintain.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point too.
Hosting
I was actually going to describe
business. Hosting is a very unthankful business. I have the assumption that WeWeb doesn't want people to use their hosting. They just want people to self-host because it's way less support and way less troubles for them. They just want people buying AI credits and self-hosting. That's my assumption of it. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, I don't know how they feel in their heart of hearts, but certainly their pricing does seem to point towards they're no longer quite as discouraging for people going and doing self-hosting as they used to be. And I think that's because they understand their role as build tool, right? That makes them look more like a lovable, more like these others. Because really what you're paying for are the AI credits on the build side. But I was actually going to say that I look at Despia, and I would have not characterized Despia as a build tool. Now, certainly, I take your point that it's not like long-term infrastructure. You're not running, but you are, but you become part of a pipeline. Like you're a little bit more of a DevOps tool, right? I would posit.
Yeah.
It's people are doing the builds. They're expressing.
To be fair, I'm using iOS language. Build tool for me means you rent from us a Mac computer. That is for me because it builds the application. So that is for me the definition of a build tool. For a no-code person, the build tool is the editor, the drag and drop thing, right? So
yeah,
we are a CI/CD tool that goes into DevOps. So actually, probably surprised lots of people. Despia is in the business of renting out Mac computers. That's the only business we're in.
That's kind of like at the end of the day, that's what that's what you're doing. That's what CodeMagic's doing, etc. That's what essentially Expo EAS is doing. But what I was thinking about there was that I hadn't really thought about how you are, interestingly as part of the supply chain. But it's not like there's build and then there's infra. There's build, deploy, infra, right? And obviously the infra, when we talk about a the infra for an app that's running through Despia, right, is going to be a combination of the Apple App Store, infrastructure ecosystem, and wherever you're hosting, right? The underlying web
We
app that the Despia
There's some
is
things
channeling.
that we're adding. For example, what is if your app is offline? We
Mhm.
have actually a very cool feature where if you have a URL that hosts your WeWeb application, and this only works for WeWeb right now, but if you have a URL that always stays the same, you can add that into the Despia editor. It will be part of the native binary, and the native binary, using background processing, will always every 12 hours or so fetch a copy of your offline application through the WeWeb source. And then once the device is offline, it'll switch to that version that is cached on the device. Of course, you need infrastructure, because when WeWeb finishes the build, now this link that WeWeb gets you needs to be hosted on a path that always stays the same, that's on the cloud, so the app can fetch it when it is online, right? So this is kind of like where we need to work with Cloudflare workers, and we need to deploy a little bit of a cloud function for people. So instead of us hosting that for you, we'll either tell you and show you how to set up a template to do this yourself, or we'll build an interface in the editor that will let you drop in your AWS or your Cloudflare or your Bunny CDN API key, so you have a visual interface to set it up without code, but we don't have to manage the infrastructure, because I'll rather have the person pay 30 cents per million requests than having to pay us $5 per million requests, because if we sell something, we have to make a profit under it, otherwise we're a charity. So I'd rather not sell it at all.
And then at the same time, right, you're not exposed to, they can build with whatever, and it will work with your stuff. They can, host it wherever, and it works with your
If
stuff.
they want our
And you're
no-code
starting to
visual
carve that out.
editor, we will probably have it locked in on one vendor that we think is the best working with Despia. But yeah, if you want to write the code yourself, you can set those things up. Or maybe we'll have like a code generation tool where you can configure your routing, and then we'll say, hey, paste this code in your Cloudflare worker. Here's a tutorial.
Okay. Interesting. But actually, I mean, we were, talking about build tools, sort of the cycle of this, and like you have some new stuff, some news on the and some discoveries along the way that you've had with your work in Despia.
Yes, so we have been really pushing WeWeb with Despia, because I was looking through the database in Despia, and most Despia projects that actually upgraded were already on WeWeb. So, but like for the past few weeks and months, WeWeb users actually had a very terrible experience using Despia, because those integrations were native. You need to write JavaScript. WeWeb AI hallucinates with it because it thinks there is an npm package that it has to install called Despia, or it confuses it with some random collectible cards, which doesn't really help. So, we built a native plugin that integrates through, that you can install through the WeWeb marketplace, that runs directly inside of your WeWeb app. So you can, build native mobile apps and set up all the native functionalities directly inside of WeWeb through that plugin. And it works fantastically. It's a first-class experience. And since we did this, sales have been up 400% of Despia, because people now can actually ship their application. Because one observation that I did when we were focusing on Nordcraft is there were many people who signed up for Despia, but they didn't finish their projects. They sometimes even purchased a license, but then if I look at the database, their project now goes to an empty 404 page. And I think that's very sad. Even though we're making money of it, I thought that was sad that people started building their applications. They heard about Nordcraft, that it was so nicely integrated with Despia, and then they just couldn't, maneuver around it. Where WeWeb is ultimately easier because it is a code generation tool, not its proprietary runtime. AI can help you better in generating code for it, because it doesn't have to learn a language that only 3 people in the world understand. So when we shifted to being, focused on WeWeb right now for the integrations, for all that, within this 1 week of having the integration launched, 3 native mobile apps have been already shipped to the App Store with this new WeWeb plugin inside of it in that week, and they already have been approved by the App Store, which is pretty darn cool. Like in 1 week, 3 apps approved by the App Store, less than a week, I think that is a great achievement. And we had many, many, many dozens of people sign up and upgrade their license, and they are already on test flight. I think we already have 20 people now who are testing on test flight in that 1 week, an Android beta. And that's really cool because before that, people weren't able to ship that fast with Despia. They were stuck at making their componentization work accordingly in Nordcraft. So we saw that focusing on WeWeb allows people to ship their applications faster. So we have more success stories in less time for Despia, where in Nordcraft, it used to take weeks and months for a user to sign up, to actually upgrade, and another few months for them to actually make some progress, get it on test flight, ship it to the App Store. So now, within that 1 week, we've been making more progress and more movement than the Nordcraft user base that we used to focus on has accomplished in the whole past 6 months. And before that, 90%, 80% of the users that purchased Despia were already WeWeb users. So most of their revenue was already coming from the WeWeb community. It just was terribly integrated. So we wanted to do what makes most customers of Despia happy, and that was building a native WeWeb integration. And we're actually working on a full template that is a template that you can start right now, and you can customize, add your features to it, and it allows you to set up a native mobile application in a weekend, publish it on Sunday, and have it approved by next Friday, probably, on the App Store. So it's like a full setup template with Google Auth, native OAuth, login with Apple, haptic feedback, authentication, gated pages, in-app purchases, revenue cat, web payments using Polar to completely tax compliant for the US App Store, Face ID, passkeys, everything, all the native functionalities. It'll give you a great way to just import the Xano snippet, import the WeWeb template, have the whole shell already set up, and now you just do the thing that makes it unique.
That's pretty cool. So can I ask, in terms of your the newer WeWeb integration, is this, do you have, was this in concert with anybody over there? This is sort of you hacking your way along?
I mean, I remember I did ask Raphael, I think a few months ago, for permission. I said, anyway, we can make a plugin for Despia, and he says, yeah, just put it on the marketplace. And then I put it on the marketplace last weekend, and it was approved by Monday. They approved it immediately without any revision requests. So it's now as a library. So you have to import it as a component. But that makes more sense, because then Despia only runs when the DOM is initialized, which is a big problem in WeWeb, because it's a different life cycle to what, non-Vue developers are used to. Because with Vue, you have to, I'll worry about the life cycle and when does it run, because it's client-side. So it actually helps with a lot of things, making it as a component, not as a plugin.
Interesting. All right. So
I'm very excited about WeWeb. I'm right now, I got 3 WeWeb projects open. I have been already finding my way around WeWeb, and I can actually now design stuff that looks pretty darn good in WeWeb, which was always my critique. I was like, I can't do nice stuff in WeWeb. I just understood that it was a skill issue. Because if you put in the time, you can do pretty nice stuff in WeWeb. Do you see my interface here?
I can see it very tiny.
Does that, let's see. Oh, yeah, I got to make that bigger. So that's my mobile app so far. I'm working on that. That's the login screen. You got login with Google, login with Apple. I'm going to make the dashboard. There is a native drawer coming looking like the iOS one, being touch responsive. So think of it like, Framework 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit like Framework 7 plus the Ionic starter pack plus better auth for WeWeb and Despia and Xano. So I'll give you this whole boilerplate to set stuff up. So you can ship an application in a weekend. So you can buy a paid Despia license in your first 3 days of being signed up.
That and I think Lucas took the word right out of my mouth.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, but I think I want to see people make progress with Despia. So I want to make sure that we have the integrations with the tools that help people make the most progress the fastest. Because I want to see lots of Despia apps on the App Store. being very successful.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going.
I think that's a great North Star. I have told the story before of talking to other companies that are in the hey, we help people make mobile apps, and I ask how many apps using your platform are in the App Store today, and then I get a mumble answer. And not for nothing, but here we are, 6 months in. What's that number for Despia?
It's about 60, about.
60?
But if you look at that again, a week ago it was 50 about. So like we're now getting 2 weeks ago. So we're now getting like before that, even before we launched the WeWeb plugin, because there was the announcement that something is coming, people signed up for it. So like even like people were shipping apps and the past WeWeb apps before there as well. I would say of those 50 to 60, I would say 48 are WeWeb.
Wow.
Yeah. Like we got
That's
one or
really
two.
the
Like, I
market
think we
share.
got one or two apps on the App Store that are built in Nordcraft. Three
Okay.
actually. One, he's almost there, but I think he's on Android only. So like we got like 3 Nordcraft apps, most of it around 50 WeWeb apps. And then this week we got 3 approved on the App Store again. So we're getting there where we have those numbers that we can show and those case studies, right? Actually, one of the first apps that was approved on the App Store built on Despia was a WeWeb app. It was like one of the first users. And like WeWeb has been, I never wanted to look into WeWeb because I just gave it like a try for like a day and I was like, I don't like that thing. But that was right after Whist. And I didn't, to be honest, I think I didn't give it a fair shot. But now looking back at it again, I don't want to admit it, but I think I may have been wrong about WeWeb. I think I'm actually falling in love with that tool. It's a very nice tool. You can just get view components in there. You got access to the NPM package. I can run like NPM packages. I'm not limited to putting stuff on a CDN. With Nordcraft and Whist, you got to use jQuery plugins from that are older than I am. Where now with WeWeb, I can use the new hot stuff out there on the NPM ecosystem that doesn't use a CDN anymore, which is pretty nice because it just builds the component, right? Like they have this cloud building that builds this component, compiles it for you, which is pretty darn cool.
Yeah, yes, they've done some really good work. I've enjoyed WeWeb since, well, actually practically before I started State Change, when I got to first meet those folks and then get to see what amazing things people have built. That's what actually that for me is what, I mean, bringing it to the beginning of our conversation. That is what gets me going about State Change. So you can see all this remarkable stuff people have built. Like they're doing this. Hey, I've got this hard part. This is the place I'm stuck. Like, I can't believe that you did the part that you did. Not because I was surprised they could do it. I'm surprised these things could be done. Just like the amazing variety and like the way that the WeWeb has allowed that unlock on the front end is really just a credit to that team.
But also, I do have to say, my number one goal with Despia is to get as much apps on the App Store, as much beautiful apps, as much high quality apps. And we have to put our attention on the tool and build integrations for that allows us to get those results, because those results are only what creates trust. There is some trust that I create by just being around there and jumping in front of the camera and saying, hey, this is great. But the ultimate trust that we're getting as a company is based on results. Now, we need to get those results, and I found it's easier for us to get those results so we can show it to Nordcraft users. We can show it to lovable users or whatever. We can show it to React users and tell them you can do this with Despia, and it actually doesn't feel like you remember your last web view, how it felt.
It's cool. All right, so
benefit for us using WeWeb because we get more good case studies, which shows that it's a great tool for building applications quickly and with high quality.
Okay, so you have all this product development in the course of the last bit. You've got like you say, the big uptick in sales, what have you. We're going to do this again in a week. What's going to be true when we talk next week that's not true today?
I think next week there's a good chance that we're going to have NFC set up in Despia, where you can read and write NFC tags with your WeWeb app. Usually, WeWeb apps can read and write NFC tags with the native sensors. So now going to integrate the native sensors. I remember last time you said you like playing with the native sensors of mobile devices. We may get you back into WeWeb then.
Yes, the native stuff really just is where the Grace fun is. I really like that bit. I was thinking about that relative to like think about an open router, right? And how there are a bunch of people who sort of like open router because you can swap among models.
We will
Sorry,
have you will love this. We will have access on the desktop mobile app on compatible devices to use the GPU to run AI inferencing on the device.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Does it make the app hot? Well, in our internal beta, yes, on certain devices. We're still working out the kinks, but we're working on supporting local AI. So this will be the foundational AI models that can run on the device. Also, we're going to create our own database that will not be hosted. It will be called Despia Base, and it will be SQLite. So you can access a comparison to SQLite. It's not SQLite. We can't use brand names. But it is inspired by SQLite. So you can use something that is inspired by SQLite natively in your WeWeb application. And I remember there was Scott from State Change, and he was like using IndexedDB, and Fred had that issue, and everybody has the issue. How do I get my WeWeb PWA to work offline? You don't have to worry about that anymore. There will be a plugin for Despia Base that lets you read and write and query any value on this local database that your application will include. Your whole application will be able to work offline because you'll be able to put a Despia webhook on your WeWeb build, and that will be the offline version of the app. So the online version still has updates over the air, and then the offline version will sync itself every 12 hours with this, depending on how we'll host that. We don't want to host for you, but we'll see how we set that up. You may want to host it yourself. You may build an interface for it, but you'll be able to have fully offline working WeWeb apps, and you can cache all your WeWeb collections inside of the Despia base. You can even store videos in there to allow offline playback. Of course, you'll end up storing them as, base 64, but it can pretty much handle it because you're using native hardware acceleration.
Yeah.
So this is groundbreaking for WeWeb users because PWAs usually work terribly offline because you got to cache stuff, and then then the app isn't real time anymore and all that kind of stuff. Where we have two versions, we take a copy of your app from the code export, that's the offline version, and then we take the live version from your URL, and they switch. And then you can set the state of them in a database. So you can have a database that's like app state. And then if they are on the home feed and then it goes offline, you just open the offline app and then look in the database, say, oh, start at the home feed. So it's like a seamless experience. It just blends in. They won't even know they're offline. And then you can store the requests they're doing in the Despia offline database. And then when they're connected in the online app, on the online app, when it reloads, you will look into the database. Are there any tasks scheduled? And then you send that to Xano and work with it.
That's super cool, man.
So that took many months to figure out.
We're looking for that for next week. We're going to see what progress we can make on our work together.
I'm really excited for that. I think if anybody is really serious about building an application, they got to be in State Change, but I also think they got to be in NoCode ProCode if they are using WeWeb, if they are using NordCraft as their front-end tool. And with this new $199 a month plan, you can get access to both. You can get up to 10 hours of office hours a week. You essentially have two not official CTOs right at your side, looking over your shoulder and assisting you to make sure that you're going into the right direction.
Yep, I think this is I do like the idea of the offer. If even just one person does it, I'd be just so excited about like the opportunity to help them go just insanely fast. We talk about like how some of the stuff it just can't really change, but the thing is, you can go faster. It's just not, you can't go faster just with a tool. right? You go faster by having just that little bit of input to the skill sets you don't necessarily have at the beginning, but you do have at the end, and using the best tools for the job, and then just, oh man, the sky's the limit.
And now this also extends state change to be Nordcraft compatible. Look at that for all the Nordcraft. Because Ray, you've been like avoiding that like a hot potato. You know, every time I bring up Nordcraft, you're like, I'm playing with web components. I'm like, what happened to your efforts in learning Nordcraft?
Yeah. Well, actually, that question of like what people should be spending their time learning, I think that is a great topic for us to pick up when we do office hours next time.
Yes, we'll be prepared better, and we don't have to reschedule anymore because now it's every Monday.
Wonderful. Yeah. I'll see you again. Same bad time, same bad channel, man.